Okay, this is Homework Help Video Unit 4 Worksheet 1, and I'm going to start with number 1C. So it asks us to reduce to its lowest terms, and then identify the values of the variable that must be excluded. So there's no adding or subtracting in C, so all we're doing is going through and reducing each group. So if I look at 30 over 24, I can divide both by 3. So 30 divided by 3 is 10. And then 24 divided by 3 is 8. And so I still have a 10 and an 8, so that means I could do larger than 3, because those are both still even. So then I'm going to try dividing by 6. So 30 divided by 6 is 5. 24 divided by 6 is 4. And 5 and 4 have no common factor, so 5 and 4 are the smallest. And then when I look at a to the 5th and a squared, I have 5 a's on top, 2 a's on the bottom, so altogether that will leave me with a to the 3rd. So 5 minus 2 is 3. I have b to the 3rd over b to the 3rd, so that's like divided by like, so that reduces to 1, but I don't need to write 1. And then here I have 4 c's on top and 9 on the bottom. So these 4 will take 4 off of the 9. So then that leaves me with a c on the bottom to a power of 5. So there's more c's on the bottom, and 5 will be left. And then for my excluded values, if I look at the denominator, I know that c cannot equal 0, or I would be dividing by 0. Okay, let's take a look at G. So for G, I have adding and subtracting in my problem, so that means I want to factor. So for the numerator, I have 3 terms, so 1, 2, 3 terms, so I want to list my factors. So 3n squared is 3n and n, and 2 is 1 times 2. So because those are my only possibilities, I know that I have to figure out, does the 1 go here or here? And I know I'm trying to get a 5. So because when they multiply, they equal a negative 2, that means either it's negative 1 and 2 or 1 and negative 2. Because when I multiply a positive times a negative, that's the only way to get a negative. So if I do multiply the 3 to negative 1, that gives me a negative 3 and a positive 2, which will only add up to 1. If I multiply the 3 to the 1 here, and to the negative 2 here, that gives me the negative 6 and positive 1. So that means I want 3 to multiply to the negative 2. So again, that's negative 6 and 1, which gives me the negative 5. So the numerator factors to 3n plus 1 and n minus 2. And then for the denominator, I have 2 terms and no squared, so I have to have at least a GCF. So I can divide a 2 out of both of those. And when I divide 2n by 2, that gives me 1n. And negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And then I'm going to quickly check through and make sure I have everything factored completely. So no squareds, no common. No squareds, no common. No squareds, no common. So now I like to see, are any of these factors reducing? And n minus 2 will reduce. And I'm left with 3n plus 1 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator. Okay, let's take a look at n. So for this one here, the first thing I see is that this is all turned around, right? And I have x squared negative. So I want to go ahead and fix that. And I'm going to take the negative out and rearrange this. So this is really negative x squared, negative 2x, and positive 8. But I don't want a negative here. So I'm going to factor out that negative. So when I take a negative out, this will turn positive, the negative will turn positive, and the positive will turn negative. And so now it's in the right order where I have my squared term first, and my squared term is positive in the grouping. And so then I want to factor both of these. So when I look at x squared minus 5x plus 6, my factors are 1 and 6, or 2 times 3. And I'm trying to find which pair will give me a negative 5. So the only way to get a positive 6 when I multiply and keep a negative in the problem is for these both to be negative. So if I look here, I've got negative 1 and negative 6, which is negative 7, not negative 5. So then that means my factors have to be negative 2 and negative 3. And then I'm going to go this way just to save some room. So that would be x negative 2 and x negative 3. I still have a negative. And then I want to go ahead and factor the bottom one there. So I want to list my factors of x squared, which are x and x, and my factors for 8 are 1 and 8, or 2 and 4. And then one of these has to be negative, because the only way to get a negative when I multiply is if I have one positive, one negative. So if I subtract 1 and 8, because 1 will be negative, that gives me 7, and I'm looking to get a 2. So I have a 4 and a 2, and I want a positive 2, so that means that one has to be negative. So negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, and negative 2 plus 4 is positive 2. And then these are just 1x, and so then I'll have negative 2 and positive 4. And so these are my factors for my denominator. So my factors for my numerator, and then my factors for my denominator. So I'm completely factored, so then I look to see are any of the factors the same, and I have an x minus 2, so that'll reduce down to 1. And so then my answer for that, again, I'm going backwards here, is I have an x minus 3 over negative x plus 4. Okay. And then let's do one more here. Look at p. So I have 4 terms here. So I want to do factor by grouping whenever I have 4 terms. So if I look at the first pair, I can take a y out of both of those. And if I look at the second pair, I can divide a 5 out of both. So when I divide a y out, I'll have y squared over y, which is y. Here the y's cancel, leaving a 3, negative 3. And then I'm taking out a positive 5. 5y divided by 5 is y, and negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. My common factor is y minus 3. When I take a y minus 3 out of this group, I have a y left. When I take a y minus 3 out of this group, I have a plus 5 left. So then my numerator factors to y minus 3 and y plus 5. And so right here, this is a cubic. So I have 2 terms to a power of 3. So root 1 is the cube root of y cubed. And then root 2 is the cube root of negative 27. So negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is negative 27, and y times y times y is y to the third. So my first grouping is y minus 3, because it's my cubic originals, cube root originals. And then I square the first root, so I square, multiply, square. So y times y is y squared. Then I multiply these together, so y times negative 3 is negative 3y, but my middle term is opposite. And then I square the second term, so negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. So I have my originals, and then I square, multiply, square, but opposite on the middle. I'm completely factored, so then I look for common factors and cancel them to 1. And so then my answer is y plus 5 over y squared plus 3y plus 9.